Hi, everybody. I do see a couple of faces from last month, so thank you for returning. Also happy to see the new people. Um, I come from a design background and I got into research very early in my UX career. So I've been a full-time researcher since 2015. And a couple of years ago, I attended some Nielsen Norman classes and got some instruction on more advanced topics in UX research and in UX management, which I think is mislabeled. I think they should call it UX strategy. But I have been putting those into place for the past few years. And I wanted to share my experiences with you so that you could understand what I did. And later on, I'm going to ask you if you've actually tried to create UX champions and what your experience has been. So there will be something to share later on. So if you want to be thinking about that, I will ask you for that later on. So let's go on. It's a little bit of housekeeping. In the chat, tell me what you want to get out of these sessions and what questions you have in UX strategy. There will be question breaks. Raymond and Janine will be collecting those, and we'll go through with that. I will try to answer your questions as we get through that. Please make sure you mute your audio unless you've been asked to mute during the Q&A. And please make sure that your Zoom name is your actual name instead of something funky. I know my sister's email address is Nutty Crew. That doesn't really help me when I'm trying to address people. So make sure it's a real name so that I can call on you. For answer to your first question is yes, the deck, the notes, the recordings will all be shared afterwards. If you want to be invited to the Guild Slack group, please indicate that in the chat by adding your email address, or you can email me privately at jillian@uxrguild.com. We do have an exclusive channel called Leveling Up with UX Strategy. It's only for people who attend this class. We want to make sure that everyone that's in there is sort of up on the conversation, so that we're not having to sort of try and recap all of the sessions for people before they can share. And we'll be sharing articles and resources. I did share some quizzes that we talked about in the last session. So those are in the chat on the channel that you can take, and we've been having some conversations around those. We did have some problems with getting people on the Slack group, and I think it is the difference between the Zoom email address that you used for logging in for the session and the address you used for Lumia. We couldn't match those two together, so we didn't know who you were. And when you log in with Zoom, it doesn't require you to put in an email address. So there was just there were several people that we just couldn't match up. So if you want to be invited and are not currently in, or you think you should have been added the last time and you didn't get in, please request it in the chat, put in the email address you want used, and we will make sure that you get added. We want everybody to have that opportunity. And here comes the poll. So what is your current role? Now, this particular process that I'm going to talk about is very much related to researchers. And that is my experience. So I wanted to find out who I'm talking to make sure I'm talking to people, at the level where they're at and everything. So, if you're a designer or a manager or, some other role, it would be good to know so that I make sure that I'm addressing it properly. So do we have the results on the poll?
Here are the results of the poll, Jillian. UX researchers, 8. UX management, 1. Some non-UX role, 1.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So we're at least half researchers then.
No, half.
So that's good.
8 out of 10 researchers, 1 in management, okay. 1 non-UX.
Okay. So last time when we met, I covered 2 main topics. One is that, that UX strategy is a combination of users and business. So what I mean by that is that we as UX strategists, we need to talk to the business in their own language, but we need to talk to them about what are their business goals and their pain points and their needs as the business, and match that with the user's needs. And that is the crux of UX strategy. When you can do that, it's a win-win for everybody. And that's really what we want to try and see. And that's what makes the business successful. That's what makes the user successful. That's what makes us successful. The second is that everybody is a leader. You don't have to be a leader in order to follow this UX strategy. Leadership is not rank. To the one person who said that they were in UX management, it doesn't mean that you can't also be a UX strategist, but you can still lead without being without having a management role. Management is rank, and you shouldn't try and manage other people without that authority and everything, but you can still be a leader. I don't manage anybody whatsoever, although I do have seniority over all the other researchers in the office, and I do mentor them. That's something different and everything, but I'm not a manager. But I still have a leadership role. I can talk directly to all of the business stakeholders who are now VPs of sales and business development and all that kind of business and everything. And they talk to me because they recognize my leadership. So that is something that you can do. You have to present yourself as an authority in your topic, and anybody with good faith will recognize you as an authority in your area. I don't walk into a hospital and present myself as an authority on medicine, but if they ask me about my work as a researcher and as a strategist and as a UXer, I can definitely be an authority on that. So I can present leadership without actually being a manager. So that's the point there. So let's go ahead and move on to our topic today, which I know everybody's super excited about. And that is how to create a UX champion. And the main component of that is research. You have to present some really high quality, kick-ass research. And what that does when you meet with these stakeholders and everything, that gets them to recognize that you're an authority in your area. You are telling them something that they sometimes, you're telling them something they already know, and that legitimizes you. Okay, I know this to be true. You found it out in research and everything, so you must know what you're doing because I already believe that. Great. Then you tell them, you validate something they suspect is true, which is it makes them feel smart that you sort of validated that yes, I kind of thought that was true. I'm so glad she was able to prove it, and it makes them feel smart. And then you have the authority. And here's the special secret sauce. You tell them something that they didn't know, and they trust it because of the first two pieces. So you've already got the authority as a researcher. You're already legitimate, and now they trust you, and you're a valuable resource because you can find out things that they didn't know. That is the crux of it, and that is your power. And you can use that to build a really good working relationship with all of the people, whether they're in development, whether they're in product, whether they're on the business side. I will tell you that I focus on the business side because those are the people that create the budgets that get our work done. I feel like that's really where I want to focus. I am in conflict a little bit with UX management because my boss wants to focus on the product people. So that's a whole nother animal altogether. And while I work very closely with them, I focus on the business, and I find that to be very successful. So how do you identify UX champions? So you're doing the kick-ass research, you're telling them stuff that they know, stuff that they suspect, and now you're giving them that magical stuff that they didn't know and everything. So how do you identify them? You invite everyone to your research meetings. This includes business, product, tech, anybody that is remotely related to the project, and get them involved. And it's very important that you are the organizer of all the research related meetings. Don't tag on to somebody else's meeting. Don't tag on to product. Don't tag on to something else. This again, it's subliminal. It's you establishing yourself as an authority. I know that if I send a meeting invite to my stakeholders, because I've established myself as an authority, they're going to try and make those meetings. I've invited, I have 3 main champions, and I've invited them even when I knew that someone was blocked on their calendar. They still accept my meetings. And it's because they value what I have to tell them and the advice that I can give them. And that is an awesome thing. As I've been preparing for this presentation over the last month, I've sort of refreshed my view of how I engage with these people and what sort of response I'm getting back from them. And it's been very humbling and gratifying to see that I really do have their trust. And it's something that didn't come overnight. It's taken, I've been at the company now for over 3 years, and some of it came quickly, and some of it has really settled in and has become a very great working relationship I will treasure for the rest of my life. But again, you have to be the organizer of your own meeting. You have to be the one scheduling it, so that people, when they see your name on that, sending them an invite, it means something. You should always present your findings in a meeting. Don't email them. You can email them after the meeting for the people who weren't able to attend, but this gives you an opportunity to engage with your stakeholders. And I'm saying stakeholders at this point instead of specifying business, because you may not have access to the business stakeholders right away. You're always going to look for whoever wants to engage with you on the research. And that is the person that you can convert into a champion. It may be the head of product. It may just be a product owner. It may be a project manager when you're first starting out and everything. You're always looking for who is super engaged in the research that you're providing and who is willing to help you along. It's that reciprocity, because you're making them successful, they make you successful. So you want to, whoever's engaged. So by over communicating with them, with all the meetings, presenting your research and everything, find out who's the most engaged. And the very first stakeholder that I targeted for this process was because he was so vocal in these research presentation meetings. He was said, wow, this is amazing stuff. I didn't know this. How did you get this? This is awesome. And that's when I knew I had a potential candidate. And instead of just basking in the praise and everything at the moment, I immediately thought, this is someone that I can go further with. I can really, take this UX champion stuff to heart and really, work with him and get earlier engaged with him in these projects so that I can sort of, steer the ship and lead the ship, as opposed to being, just dragged along by the ship, which is the way we feel a lot of times with this research, where, we're coming in. I've been in projects where I was involved after the development team started. What are they developing if we haven't done any research yet? I mean, come on. I'm sorry, I've got a gnat that's vying for my attention. Please ignore my waving hands. That you want to get to a point where, and the whole reason to have a champion is someone who will talk to you about how they're steering the business, so that you get that early information, so that you can be the most valuable, to the team, to the project, to the company. And this is how you do it. So I also do something I've heard called notes from the field, but distribute your research notes, after each session. I always create, and it can be as simple as, a handful of bullet points shared on Slack. That's the way I've done it for a long time. I distribute the name of, I work with internal employees, so the name of the employee, where they're located, what their role is, the link to the recording, and then 5 to 10 bullet points that were important about what I found out. And that is shared on Slack. Everybody's invited, including all the business stakeholders. the developers, the product owners, the other UX people engaged in the project. And that's my notes from the field. It can be just that simple. It could be an email that you send out afterwards to everyone that's involved with the research. Invite them to observe your research sessions. I invite every single business stakeholder to the research sessions, whether it's in their area or not. And at first they attended one or two, and if it's somebody that they're really super interested in hearing with, they'll still try and attend. But at the very least, they can watch the recordings. This is, again, you're getting your name in front of them, you're getting UX in front of them, you're getting research in front of them. They're always thinking about research now because of all of these touch points that you have with them. And so that is what's really, really important in this process. So, you know, when at all these touch points, you're always looking for who's super engaged and who's making those, you know, exclamations of how valuable the content is and so forth. So last slide before the questions, we'll get to those. As I said, now that you know someone you can target, you want to over communicate, you want to do the kick-ass research. Ask your champion to further engage in research. You know, ask them basically after that one guy made all these exclamations about the research and everything. I said, hey, do you want to be invited to all of these sessions? Do you want to be, you know, invited to all the presentations? And all of his answers were yes, yes, yes. You know, I'm just asking him for permission, basically spam his inbox. And if you get that permission, then you got it. So you move forward with that. You know, just bring them in as much as they want. Ask them if they want me to send them notes after the sessions, whatever it is, whatever opportunities you have. And then, you know, if they're super engaged and everything, ask them for a regular meeting. Just say, you know, can I get on your calendar, you know, for 30 minutes once or twice a month, and let's talk about what's happening, what's coming up that I don't know about. And I can tell you, you know, what's going on. I also drag my design partner with me, whether he likes it or not. And so, you know, it's both of us hearing what the business stakeholder is saying. And the very first one of these meetings that I had with my very first stakeholder champion, we both said at the same time, how can I help you? That was awesome. That was awesome because he wanted to help me and I wanted to help him. That, you know, that's what you're hoping for. I don't want to say that it's going to go that smoothly for everybody. But if you follow these steps, you know, you're going to find the right people who want to hear what you have to say and want to be engaged. And if you know, you'll gradually work your way up there and everything, because right now, the only thing that's preventing me from talking to my business stakeholders boss is that he has so much ADHD. He really is not good at these kinds of meetings and holding this kind of knowledge and everything. I've met him before. He's a lovely person and everything, but he's fidgety and he doesn't pay attention very well. And they basically just, you know, feed him in droppers of the information, and you know, he trusts the business stakeholders to make those decisions. I have actually presented all the way up to the CEO of the company, and I've heard you know, great feedback from him, and that he was hearing about my work and me from all of the others. So I'm pretty happy with that. So after you start meeting with them, look for signs that they're talking about your work. And especially the research after, you know, you're hearing about this from other people. So I'm hearing from other, you know, other business people, other product people and everything. And, you know, that tells me that it's not just limited to that half hour that I've got with them. They're actually thinking about the work, the research, and they're thinking about UX, even when I'm not standing there. So, and I knew that I had them when in one of those 30-minute meetings, they said something is, you know, something's coming up. We have this project that our boss, the guy with the ADHD, is super passionate about. He wants you to go out and figure out what's going on with this section of the app and come back and tell us what we should do. That's amazing. That's like gold right there. I don't know if he regrets it or not, because it's been an ongoing project for 2 years. And so, but it's been a vast improvement in the product, but it wound up being like a 5-stage project and so forth. But, they didn't say, we're going to make this change, go out and find out, how we can make that work. They said, we know this is a problem area, we want to improve it. You go out and come back and tell us what we need to do. That is a UX champion right there. That is someone who trusts you and values you and knows that you can handle whatever they're going to throw at you. And then you rinse and repeat with every other candidate you can find. I now have 3, as I said, stakeholders. They cover the spectrum of the business divisions. And when I asked the third one for the 30-minute meeting, his response was, I thought you'd never ask. So that is my success story right there. They were very excited about meeting with me, and I don't know why he didn't just ask for his 30-minute meeting himself. He could have had that anytime he wanted it, but he waited for me to ask and then said, I thought you'd never ask. And we've been off to the races. At this point, I'm going to take questions, and then I'd like to hear from you guys to share your experience on anything that you've had, success, failure, work in progress, and let's see what everybody else is experiencing.
Let's see, Reem, you had a couple of questions. Do you want to ask that your first one, or I can read it, whichever?
Sure. Hi. So for my first question, I'm not working in an organization right now. I just finished my PhD and I'm on the job market. But in the meantime, I've been networking and meeting. In Montreal, we have a very vibrant startup community. But a lot of people will just start a project and start a startup without doing any research. They've got an idea, they start working on it, and they don't really know that maybe they do some research on their own, but they don't see it as something that they should be explicitly doing to flesh out what their product or what their platform should be doing. So how do we win those people over so that we can sell them our services? Basically.
Yeah. Well, the thing that comes to mind to me is that, especially for startups and everything, do they really have money to waste on building something wrong? Research is all about mitigating that risk. So, by taking the step back and figuring out, are we, there's a difference, and sometimes you really have to tell people there's a difference between market research and user research. If they think that they're doing market research and it's user research, they're 2 completely different things. The market may be ready for what they want to sell, but that all depends on us building it right for the user base. And we don't have that knowledge just because the market says, yes, that sounds like a great idea. The devil's in the details. You have to actually do the user research to really understand what the users are expecting or the potential users are expecting. To me, the biggest thing you want to do is tell them that, with research, we are making sure we're building the right thing at the right time for the right users. And we're mitigating the risk, and that, is setting them up for success. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, thank you.
Okay. And did you have a second question I heard?
I have lots of questions, but the second question is that they hire designers, UX designers, and they expect the UX designers to do the research along with the design. And so what I really kept in mind is something I learned from a more senior VP I interviewed with. And what she said is that it's really important to separate the researchers from the designers, because that will reduce bias in the research, which makes total sense. But how do we sell that idea without sounding like, you know, I don't know. I try not to come off as a know-it-all, you know?
Yeah, well, it used to be a lot worse. They used to try and get designers to be developers. That is really bad. But again, you're right. It's a matter of bias. It's very hard, and best practice in research is, you know, if I'm testing a design with the users and I'm the one that created it, you know, you're telling me my baby's ugly. That makes me feel bad. So it's really hard for me to be unbiased and try not to sell my design, rather than taking open and honest, you know, feedback about what the users need. And even the person who's trying their hardest not to be biased. And I've been in that position where I had to be a designer and a researcher at the same time. It's really hard to do that and so forth. Also, you really want the designer focused on solutioning, and researchers don't solution. So, you know, if we're being honest with our research and everything, we're providing, you know, contextual recommendations about, you know, what they can do without defining what the UI should look like, which is really the designer's job. But the designer has a lot of tools and a lot of different ways that they can solution. So by separating those two goals, you allow the researcher to, you know, define the problem and come up with the recommendations without prescribing the UI solution and the interaction solution. And that leaves the designer to not be in a position where they're getting insulted to their face about their design, and also that they can concentrate on what the solution is. So that would be my feedback on that. That is really the separation of roles that you want. And I will tell you, it's hard for me as someone who's a former designer to not design, but I try to do it only in tiny ways. And I save most of my constructive criticism when it's just me and the designer. When he's presenting the design, I'm going, really? Let's talk about this little area right here and everything. But I don't do it in front of the users. I don't do it in front of stakeholders, in front of product or anything like that.
That's very helpful.
So,
thank you.
Okay. Well, I congratulations on your PhD, and I hope you get all the work that you can stand.
Thank you.
And if we have time later on, you can definitely ask more questions. But also, I believe you are in the Slack, so feel free to ask your questions there.
Okay.
You know, and I'll come back and answer them as I may.
And I think Dan had a question as well.
Okay, Dan.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I missed the beginning, so sorry if I dropped it in the chat instead of Slack. But great presentation, Jillian. I learned a lot in a short amount of time. I've run into this a couple of times as doing a discovery / strategy project where I have stakeholders and end users working in the same internal group. And you'd mentioned maybe doing the field notes, being explicit about who said what. Does that ever create any ill will? Or if I've been doing them in total confidence, saying we're not going to tell you the name, their names. Participant 5 said XYZ, and then the stakeholders guess, oh, I bet that was Brad. You know, and there's always politics that I'm not involved in, and I've been involved in them. So I just didn't know if you had any insight of why you pursue that rationale of being explicit, and then I'm assuming you'd share that with your interviewees if you're talking to them.
Well, every business is different. When I was in banking, it was participant 5
Okay.
and so forth, and I did
Okay.
that. But here, again, participant 5 was a customer. It's a completely different environment. Right
Sure.
now, it's Bob who sits in Charlotte, who is a sales rep. And they know Bob, they've met Bob, they've talked to
Okay.
Bob several times and everything.
Sure.
So it's a completely different scenario. I do not, once the participant is gone and everything, I don't give them the results that they don't see the notes. Those are only for the people that are working on the project.
Okay.
And so there is a separation, and when the rest of the teams do observe the research, they're guided. I have a list of do's and don'ts.
Mhm.
You don't talk to the participant. We don't invite the participant's manager to the session because that will intimidate them.
Sure.
We want them to speak open and honestly, and that sort of thing. We don't type, right now we're using Teams. You don't type messages in Teams during the session. We have Slack. You use Slack if you need to do that.
Mhm.
And don't type them to me, type them to my design partner or my observer, and they will collect them for me when I'm ready for them. So there are a lot of rules around that to try and keep that separation. I have
Okay.
had in 2 instances where, because again, it's my particular product is internal, that I've had to bring them too close into the project and everything. At that point, they are taken out of the participant pool and they're put into the SME pool. So now they're a subject matter expert. I can still utilize them for knowledge and background, and they can provide a lot of value and everything.
Mhm.
But sort of once they've seen the sausage made, they can't go back to being a participant. So you do have to make that distinction. I actually said bluntly to one manager, I was like, he wanted to be super involved with this project. And I said, okay, you can be a participant or you can be an observer and a subject matter expert. But if once you cross that line, I can never interview you for a project.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
he decided he wanted to be a SME. So I was like, okay, that's your choice and everything. And I was fine with whichever way he went. He still provides value, he still provides insight and everything. He's no longer unbiased, basically.
Well, that's a good way to put it. If there's a set of rules that you've already established based on the product or whoever you're interviewing, and then that makes sense too, to leave it up to them, and then they have that choice. So thanks for that answer and point of view. I appreciate it.
Okay. Did that fully answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Do we have any other questions?
No other questions in chat.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask somebody to tell me about their experience in trying to identify and creating UX champions. I really want to hear, my experience was my experience, and with a certain office, a culture, and a certain area, I never would have been able to create UX champions the way I did at the banks, the way I did where I'm at right now. It's completely different, but I think you can help everyone on the group if you're willing to share your experiences, and maybe we can talk through them and talk about some other options about what can be done if you don't feel like you were successful, if it's still a work in progress and you're hitting roadblocks. So is anybody willing to share their experience? Okay. Okay, Josephine, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to share an experience from when I was doing consulting for ADP in 2016. It's like 6 years ago. And it was a very interesting experience. I guess I would call it a partial success, partial failure. I was working on a mid-size product, and within ADP, they had maybe 43 modules, which they called products internally for this product out in the world. Okay. So I had a couple of different product managers that I interfaced with. I remember one in particular, he was never really completely on board with the idea of having a researcher on the team. This was a situation where the mandate to have researchers on the team had come down from on high. And of course, they have a lot of legacy software. And, this fellow had been doing things a certain way without a researcher for decades. Thank you very much. So, I felt a little bit like the third wheel in his world. He didn't have any questions for me. So I did what I could. I happened to sit in a cubicle next to him, even though I was there maybe on site one day a week. And I took out my big poster from the Usability Professionals Association, the one that has it's designed as a takeoff of Chutes and Ladders, I think is the game.
Okay.
Maybe some people are familiar with that. So I hung it up in my cubicle. So every time he walked past my cubicle, he had to look at it, because I wanted to let him know that, there is a standard process for the work that we do. And, if you skip steps, it has a consequence and, like that. And I think that, when I did research, it's true, I had limited access at times to actual users. So of course, he leveraged that to say, oh, well, I can't really take your results that seriously because you didn't use the right kind of users. Meanwhile, he might have even been able to help me get to real users, but of course he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So, it was tricky,
Mhm. Yeah, I've run into that with even at my current company, the original product owners that were there. Some of them ignored me completely, wouldn't deal with me and everything. Some of them treated me as a service, like I was optional, that you could just choose whether you're going to need research for a separate project. And some of the ones that have come on since I arrived and everything, I've been able to engage with them in a way where we are partners in this project. So I engage with them. I tell them what I can do, and I try to get them the information and everything. But I'm not optional, and I think it helps that I've gotten to the business stakeholders. But one of the things that I learned at Nielsen Norman is basically you work the best with the product owners that are willing to work with you, someone who already values you. And if you can make them a success, they make you a success. That's that reciprocity piece again. And so if this guy wasn't willing to cooperate, I got to tell you, he sounds like some of the product owners that used to be where I work. They don't work there anymore. And you know why? Because I started making their boss, the director of product, one of my key stakeholders, one of my champions. So, if I've got her on my side and he's not being cooperative, it turns out, quite frankly, he just wasn't, I hate to use a word because it just sounds whiny, but he was pretty much a misogynist. And he worked very well with my design partner, who was male. So he would bypass me and go to my design partner. And the thing is that a lot of his projects were not successful once I got a hold of them and I got the research. and I was able to make the recommendations, we found better solutions. But his projects weren't all that successful. And so, you know, once this new lady took over being the director of product and everything, I think she put pressure on, they all quit, that none, you know, that quiet quitting or quiet firing or whatever was going on over there, they're not there anymore. And all the people that are there have, you know, they have bought into the research. So sometimes you got to wait them out, but you always try and find those people that where the project and they're willing to work with you, and it's a project where you can be successful and really use these tools as a jumping off point, you know, that over communicating, not just with the product team, but with the other teams that are going to be engaged in this and everything. So you can use that with these few that are trying to, that are willing to work with you, and we just make them, you know, we feed off of each other. If it's you know, you have a great release on something where you were researching everything, make sure that they're then evangelizing that they couldn't have done it without your research, and you talk them up. I've got a new researcher that just started a few weeks ago, and she works with customers, and it's really difficult to get that customer network going. And she is going like gangbusters. I'm so impressed with her because she is talking to the sales reps, she's talking to the product people. And when they have meetings with these huge customers, like I think she got on the meeting for Amazon, you know, and we're a logistics company, so Amazon is huge for us. And she was able to get into a meeting just to be the fly on the wall. But you know, she's there, she got a seat. So just to be there when they're talking to them and finding out what Amazon wants and so forth. And that's her first way in. She managed that after only being here for a month. So, you know, you just got to find out who's willing to work with you. And she was able to find out a product team and a sales rep who was willing to trust her to sit in a meeting with her mouth shut and listen. And then later on, she can talk to them about what she thinks she heard from them and how she'd like to move forward with that and everything. So you've got to be really crafty and inventive with, you know, how am I going to get in front of the right people and who's going to work with me on this? And sometimes it's just the most innocuous thing, that it's, you know, getting on the right meeting to where you have that access and getting the right people. You know, sales reps are notoriously in marketing, notoriously difficult in allowing you to speak to their customers. They're afraid you're going to offend them. But when, you
Is
know,
that
when
what
you
they're
start,
afraid of? They're
yeah,
afraid you're
afraid
gonna
that
offend them?
you're going to harm the working relationship that they have with them. That
Why
is what
do
they're
they
afraid.
think that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, can you,
It's a loss of control.
bad
It's, you
control?
know, yeah. But you are someone not under their control, and you know, they get paid on commission, so it's their bread and butter and everything. So they want to make sure that they have that control. So does that make
Thank
sense?
you. Oh, yeah, and I hope it was an illustrative story for our group.
Well, you know, I think the problematic situations and everything always help other people. Even if you don't have a solution, it's that people can see that, oh, they're having the same problems I'm having. It's not just me. You know, so I think that does help. So let's go ahead and move on. I want to make sure we
Let's see,
touch all of our
Jillian.
screens. We've got 10 minutes left. Go
Jillian,
ahead.
Dan had another question.
Okay, Dan, you want to go ahead and ask it?
I'm sorry, I don't want to hold people up. You can, yeah, go ahead. That's all right. I've already typed in once. So.
Okay, I can barely hear. I can hear someone talking, but it's not loud.
I'm sorry. Just go ahead. I didn't mean to hold anyone up.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay. Sorry about my audio too. I switched mics. I was just curious, when I'm doing UX research, I'm usually looking for those very pro like you said, those advocates or those champions. And then I'm always looking for the naysayer, the at least in research participants who hate everything, who doesn't want a digital product, give me paper forms or whatever that might be. I didn't know if you, when it comes to stakeholders, if you ever see value or try to pursue those kind of negative stakeholders and try to move them from a 0 to a 1 or, whatever, however you might classify them. I was just curious, or do you just focus on those people who are giving you way and like are excited? I mean, I think it could go either way. I'm just curious what your point of view is on that.
Yeah, some people can't be converted. They sort of glory in their opposition, and those are people you just want to keep at arm's length. But some people are just it takes a longer while for them to trust. They're kind of set in their ways and they don't really want you to rock the boat. Well, guess what? We're UXers. We're going to rock the boat. That's baked in. So, as you're building up your reputation with other stakeholders and other teams and everything, they're sooner or later they can become taken over by the wave. And I'm going to give you a non-UX answer. When back way in my early days, back in the 90s, when I was a graphic designer, I worked at Scripps Clinic in La Jolla, and I worked in the academic affairs department. And basically we did PowerPoint presentations that then got converted to physical slides that they would show to show their medical research that was going on. And I used to get the most god-awful handwriting from the doctors writing out their notes that they wanted me to then type up so that they can make their presentations. And there was one doctor there, they talk about doctors having God complexes. It's a very real situation where they think they know everything and so forth. And I have always approached people, no matter what their rank is, and whatever place they hold in the company, is that I'm an authority in my work, you're an authority in their work. I'm going to respect your authority, and I'm going to command authority. So I basically, spoke with him about what I could do for him, and pretty soon he realized, I kept asking if he would send me his notes typewritten, because it would be so much more helpful, because I don't know those fancy medical terms and everything, and I might misspell them. It would take a lot of extra time. But if he just wanted to type his notes and give them to me, at this point on a floppy disk, that's how old I am, then, the process would go much smoother. And pretty soon he brought me in a floppy disk and he said, I thought about it. And I think it would, if I gave you these typed on a software and everything, and you didn't have to type them in and everything, it would go a lot faster. It's like, that's fantastic. Thank you. So basically just, overwhelm him with time. You are an authority in your area and everything. And if he wants to take credit for being smart enough to use you properly, then let them.
Okay.
It's a very subtle thing. And
Sure.
you win them over. If they have to make it their own idea, great, whatever gets the job done.
Well, that makes sense. Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate the answer.
Okay, I have one last slide. And that is, I talked to you about how I started and how the process. I want to talk to you about how it's going as I've built this out. So, the stakeholders come to me, we meet regularly and everything, and they tell me about things that they're just barely thinking about, or things that are going to be important. One of the things that I have been working with them on is a 5-year roadmap, which is something they did not have, they wanted. And again, this is when I came in and I said, I can help you build a 5-year roadmap and everything. They jumped on it because they had wanted to have one, they couldn't figure out how to do it. So I came in with a UX solution, and we've been doing that. That means that I know what their ultimate goals are. And when I hear them talking about things, I can pull out, hey, this is on the roadmap, and it will help us to get to, this further point that we want to get to and everything. And so it's all about knowing what's in their head, what keeps them up at night, what are they worried about, our priority shifting. I'm going to tell you, this week has been really obnoxiously bad from a technological standpoint, because we just spun off from the main company. and everything is falling apart. But it meant that for the past 3 to 6 months, all I've been hearing about is, we're not going to do that until post-spin. We're not going to do that right now. But post-spin, we've got all these things in. So all of our roadmap shifted around because we decided they spun us off from the main company. So, I've had that opportunity to be there to sort of help them, with my UX processes through this spin and what's going to change in the future based on that and everything. So I've been, basically a sounding board for them. I've been a brainstorming partner when they're thinking about a business problem. I had my one-on-one meeting with a stakeholder last week, and he was talking about what can we do to help the sales team. And I was like, well, based on all of these things that we know that are going on, I see these two main things that are just boulders in their way. And it's, boulder number one is this, boulder number two is this. And I think that once we fix those two boulders, everything else is just pebbles and we can prioritize after that. But we've got to fix these two boulders first. And he's like nodding and taking notes and everything. That's an extraordinarily powerful place to be, to have the stakeholders, these VPs of business development willing to talk to you and willing to take your advice on prioritizing different projects based on my understanding of 3 years of interviewing the sales team and really understanding what their job is and what they need to do to be successful. And he's listening and he's nodding and he's taking notes. So that's a real valuable place to be. Based on our one-on-one meetings, I can create research projects and project initiatives. Again, I know what's coming with their business goals and everything, and I know what the users are saying that they need, and I know what projects are coming up and everything. So what they kind of want to do and things that haven't really been prioritized, and I've been able to pull those all together. And I'm now creating project initiatives and presenting them, and the product team is picking them up and creating them. So projects that are UX research created are getting prioritized, they're getting developed, they're getting the blessing of the business stakeholders and everything. And that is ultimately where you want to be. That's why you need UX champions. And that's why you need really kick-ass research and to really have this place where it's not just somebody had a wild hair and suddenly wants something crazy, and now you have to go research it and tell them whether or not users even care. This is now, I know what the users need based on all these things, and I know what the business needs, so I can do my own research. I'm scheduling my own research and choosing who I'm going to interview to try and get these projects off the road that handle a lot of all of these pieces, but I'm putting together in a project myself. So I'm creating project initiatives, and they're getting the stakeholders' blessings, and they're getting funded, and they're getting developed. And that is what we're going to talk about in December. So that's your little sneak peek on that, and I'll go more in depth on that. And that is really what I had to talk to you today. So we can have some questions if there are any need. I've also added in a little bit of my background, but my LinkedIn and my email address. If you want to get a hold of me, if you're not on Slack, I realize some people aren't on Slack, but you can always email me. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. But I know we've got like 1 minute left. So if anybody has any last questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, Josephine had something she wanted to share with the group, so do you want to go ahead and do that?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. Next month on November 10th, it's World Usability Day. And I'm going to be part of a panel on the topic. This year's theme is Our Health. And there's a panel, and I actually had one of my speakers drop out. So I'm looking for someone who has some quantitative UX research background in a health related domain to possibly join our panel. I have the third speaker is a postdoc from Rutgers who has been doing sense-making research with bone marrow transplant patients. Some very interesting work. And I'll be talking about some of the things I've done with machine learning and UX research and UX related work on that product. So it's on, so that's Thursday night, November 10th. We can offer an honorarium, and I'm just putting it out there because I would love to find someone to join our panel.
Would,
Well, Josephine,
oh, go ahead, Jillian. Go ahead.
Yeah, I saw your note in Slack, I believe it was, and I sent it to that new researcher. She does quantitative research. I don't know if she has any medical background, but I did send it to her, so you may hear from her.
All right,
Go ahead,
thank
Janine.
you so much.
Yeah.
Janine, did you want to say something?
No,
now?
actually, that was basically what I was going to suggest, is go that route on
Mhm.
Slack, so.
Yeah,
Josephine, I also do quantitative research. The closest I came to health is looking at well-being as a consequence of social media use. I don't know if that's of any interest.
Yeah, let's chat. I'll put my email address in the chat. And we should have a conversation for possibility there.
Sounds good.
I love it. You guys are using this appropriately. I love the cross-pollination for different projects and sharing of ideas. I think that's awesome. Okay, I think we're ready to shut it down. I want to thank all of you for attending. Please come back in December and we will talk about what you can do once you have a UX champion and how you can move forward with that. It's very exciting, and I think that the possibilities are endless. And always feel free to share any of your successes and your failures and your works in progress. You know, this especially on Slack, or if you want to talk about them or want any sort of sharing any sort of advice from me or anybody else about how we can proceed. I find that brainstorming with a lot of like-minded people and everything still brings up things that I haven't thought about doing myself. And that's what I'm hoping everybody will get out of this, is they can find ways of we can help each other to all be successful.